Well, good morning. The sun is out, and it's a beautiful day here in Waldoboro, Maine, and we are at the Waldoboro Historical Society. My name is Jean Lawrence, and I am the president of the society, and it is my pleasure to give you a tour of the buildings that we have here and to share with you some of the history of Waldoboro. It is also our pleasure to tell you a little bit about how we happen to get to be in this site. The history of Waldoboro was started by Jasper Stahl, and after his book was published, his set of books, his organization kind of went out of business. It wasn't really a business, it was a support for him. And in 1968, a lady by the name of Caroline Totman, who lived in South Waldoboro, she was an artist, she was very disturbed by the number of antiques that were being taken from the town of Waldoboro by dealers, never to return. And she talked to people and she said, this is wrong. This is the history of the town, and we really shouldn't just sell it off. So she and a group of interested citizens formed the present Waldoboro Historical Society. Now they started off down more in the village, and we're in a couple of different locations until in 1972, they were able to purchase land on this side of Route 220, which included the town pound, which is on the other side of the barn, and this acreage here up to the fence. And the barn was on the property. The school and this building were not. And that's where the Historical Society began, in what we call the Richard Wallace Barn. And it was really in 1974 that the schoolhouse was moved on the property from up in North Waldoboro, and it was in 1975 that well, how do I put this? I guess we have to say that the bylaws were created. We already had been incorporated, but the bylaws were created in 75, and it was in 2012 that our mission statement came into being. Now, this building in the front was built around 1972, 73, and it was Gus Hauck that was the leader of the building program, and it was added on in 2013. So when we go into the building, you will see that the front part of it was designed to be as fireproof as possible, and then the back part of it was added to give us more space for our textiles and for our uniforms and for our historical documents. So the gardens around these buildings are just beautiful. We welcome anyone to come anytime to come to look at them. The museum is open every day of the week in the summertime, except on Tuesdays, from noontime to 3. And we have our wonderful team of volunteers who sit here and who make it possible for people to come in and visit the museum. There is never a charge to come to the Waldoboro Historical Society. So come and see our flowers on the grounds, and if we're not open, but if we are open, look right over here and you will see Conrad the bear, and his sign says, welcome. Come to this building first and begin looking at the wonderful artifacts that we have for you. He, by chance, also is a chainsaw created bear. Okay, we're ready. We're going to go inside and we're going to begin. Well, when you first come in to the Historical Society, you probably look at, first of all, either the military exhibit or the fire engines. We have 4 fire engines, the oldest one being the one that's right here in 1838, and that is the Water Witch. That was a hand-drawn wagon. Never had horses attached to it at all. Men pulled it and pushed it from the back. And the men that were on the back, they were the brake. There were no brakes on it other than the men holding on to the rope at the back. It had to be filled with water by buckets, and then the handles, which are over in the back, we can't keep them on because they're too long, were attached to the sides, and men got on it and pumped it until they got up enough pressure to force the water that was inside it up through a hose and onto the fire. And our second machine is the Madomic. She also never was actually owned by the town. The town didn't own any of these, really. They were all privately subscription purchased. And she came over on the ice. She was a second-hand engine, and down in Massachusetts, and down near the Old North Church is where she came from. She did have horses attached to her at one time. And then you have the third one is the Triumph. I love to look at the wheels and see the hand-painted design on the wheels. Now, while the Water Witch has been redone, rehabbed by the local fire department association. We really appreciated that when they had their anniversary. These others have not been rehabbed. The last one is the Bawbees. Now the Bawbees is also a second-hand engine, and that came from Gardner, Maine. And that was bought primarily by a group of firemen who were interested in going to meets to pump the engine and compete with other companies that had antique engines. They purchased that, and it was 8 men on a side, so you had to have 8 men to pump it. And I know that it was being used at meets in the 1950s. So that is also a beautiful machine, and it is a part of our collection. We do not know whether there are any other museums in the United States who have 4 original engines. As you look over here, you will see that there is what we call a military exhibit. Now, we are fortunate because we have many, I won't say tons, but we have a good supply of uniforms that Waldoboro men have worn when in the service. And they have been given to us for safekeeping by their family. That one right over there is the Clyde Campbell uniform, and he lived in South Waldoboro. And this one is the Edwin Benner U.S. Army uniform. And then we also had on the other side a beautiful West Point cape that was given to us. And it is absolutely gorgeous. In the military exhibit, there are all kinds of wonderful things. We constantly change it. 2 things that we will always probably leave in it are Conrad Hires, who was a Continental soldier, the bayonet that we know, was used by him. And then we also have Colonel Atherton Clark's sword that he used as he led the Waldoboro contingent in the Civil War. And he is pictured right here with the sword in his hand with several of the other officers of the 20th Maine. Throughout the exhibit, you see pictures such as up there, that is Otis Benner. Over there is Robert Studley. Over the years, men in Waldoboro who have served in our military, and we're very proud of them. Right over on the right-hand side is a new exhibit this year, and that is an exhibit that has been made, and it was made possible by the family of Frank E. Overlock. There are many things that were a part of his career in the Masons. And it's a beautiful exhibit. Most of the cases are lit, and everything, as much as possible, has some material with it that will tell you what it is you are looking at. So you don't need a guide to take you through the museum. We also have all of our books that we have for sale and our objects and things right there. As we walk this way, you begin to see some of the beautiful, beautiful textiles that we have in the museum. The first things you'll look at are our hooked rugs. And we are famous, the town of Waldoboro. I don't know whether everybody knows it or not, but in the world of art, we are famous for our Waldoboro rugs. These are rugs that were made here. They were original patterns that the women created, and they were done on linen, and the stories behind each of the rugs is really quite interesting. Then we have some very primitive rugs, such as the one right here in front of me and another one here. These were made long before the Waldoboro rugs were designed, and you can actually tell because you can tell how they were cut by hand by the women who made them, and their designs were usually quite simple, but very beautiful. And then we have a hooked rug here that was made in 1981 by Marjorie Freeman, who was very active in the society, and she followed the directions and the pattern that was used in the original Waldoboro rugs, either a tan or a light green background, a bouquet of flowers in the center, the scrolls going outward, done on a linen background or a specially designed background for the hooking. And this is a prized possession. Because our society and our museum is so well respected, we have been recognized by a museum that for many years collected rug work and is now gone out of business because they couldn't keep it going down in Massachusetts. And they have sent us also some rugs that were a part of the collection. They're antique rugs, and we are thrilled to have them. That was the museum down in Massachusetts. We also have quilts. Now this year we're doing an exhibit of what you call signature quilts. And if I hold this open, maybe our videographer can take a picture and you can see that the squares all have names that are embroidered on them. I believe this is one of the North Waldoboro quilts that was made, and it sometimes is made for a whole family, or the square, or sometimes it's just an individual person. But we have a group of signature quilts this year. The most recent one that we received is one that we had to research. I can't get to it. It was a quilt top that was found, and it came as a gift from a woman who was brought up in Madomic, Maine, and when she was engaged to a man and going to be married to a fella out on Dutch Neck, the townspeople got together and they made this quilt top for her, and it was never made into a quilt. We found it, I researched it, and one of our trustees, Pat Christensen, took it and backed it, tied it, and now we have it as a part of our collection, and we're thrilled with it. Those are some of the things that we do when we find beautiful gifts. These are all quilts that have been given to us. We have quite a collection of quilts, and we revolve our collection all the time. Now over on the wall over here, you see some work that has been done by some very, very young girls. These are samplers over here, and some of the girls are only like 12 years old. They're a beautiful, beautiful collection. They usually say, the first one way up at the top says that she was born in 1807. And that's the long, narrow one. Others, one girl is 13, another one 12. These are priceless. And they are gorgeous, and they are Waldoboro girls. The other family register that is on the wall there tells the story of a family's births and deaths. And there are two pieces of hair with a blue ribbon tied on them, and those were for two of the children that passed away and did not grow to maturity. So this is where we are when you first come into the museum, loaded with lots and lots of pictures of Waldoboro's past. Wonderful, wonderful examples. For instance, way up here on the wall is the Smouse House, which was on Main Street. It's no longer in existence, but if you know up there where the cider press is, it was on that property. So we walk over here a little bit. Every year we try to put out new exhibits. This year we have put out an exhibit of artifacts from churches in Waldoboro. There are posters, there are histories, there are artifacts like plates and so forth. And then we also have two Bible exhibits, one here in this building and one over in the barn. And we have a lot of old Bibles that people have given to us. It's sad when we don't have any history for each Bible. Sometimes on the pages inside we can glean a little bit of history, but they're beautiful. And on the back wall is our tribute to the German church, and that tells you about different people that have come and painted the church or sketched the church, some of the old posters that were used for the service of it. And then over in the corner we have a fire exhibit, and that has a lot of pieces of history of the Waldoboro Fire Department and the shirts that are in the back. For instance, down here underneath here is what it's called, it was put out by the United Firemen's Insurance Fund, and which was founded in 1860, and they would attach this to their house if they had fire insurance. We don't do that anymore, but that's an artifact. This is the old horn system that was used in Waldoboro for many years. people would hear that horn go off and they knew it was noontime. Other times, depending on how many times it rang, it told them about fires and called firemen to come and to aid. We have a lot of fire department memorabilia. One of the rugs that I did not mention is this beautiful rug up here that was done by Marjorie Freeman, and it is of the five-masted schooner. And she designed that and hooked that herself. She was a lovely lady, filled with all kinds of knowledge of Waldoboro's history. Now, as we walk over this entryway, we walk into what we call the Bailey part of the Hauck Bailey building. This is the addition that was put on in 2015. And usually, people come in, they turn around and they look at this wall and they say, "Oh my gosh, what is that?" Well, that is called a theater curtain. And the theater curtain was that this one happened to be used at Winslow's Mills Grange. And when the Grange closed, they gave it to the Waldoboro Grange and Monaga. And we were the benefactors of this because it didn't fit on their stage. And so we were in the process of building this addition when Ron Dolph called me up and said, "Would the Historical Society accept a theater curtain?" And I said, "Well, how big is it?" And he gave me the dimensions, and I said, "I'll call you back. I got to call the carpenter." So I called David Christensen, our carpenter, and I said, "David, we've got a theater curtain coming, and I need a wall so big." And he said, "You'll have it." And he said, "I'll hang it for you." And sure enough, he did. And originally, these were in Granges, and they showed movies usually during the week, and the curtain would be down when people come in, and they'd see all of these ads. These are all ads for businesses around Waldoboro. The telephone numbers are a hoot, because the Levenseller and Sons store, which sold boots, shoes, and rubbers, was 45-11. That was the telephone number. But people like the Waldoboro Garage, Roland Genthner, the Kastner Brothers Transportation, Paragon Button Factory, all of these names are familiar names, and way up at the top, the Madomic National Bank. And this was hanging in the 30s. And it was rolled up at intermission. The screen was rolled up at intermission. This came down. People looked at it during intermission, then they rolled it back up again, and the screen came down, and they would finish the movie. As you go through the area, you see a round table here. This is one of our special exhibits for this year. It's an exhibit of what is called a cabinet card exhibit. And we have many, many, many of these wonderful cabinet cards that are just fantastic. They are beautiful pictures, professionally done, not a name on a card. And people collect these, and we have quite a nice collection of them. We know who some of the photographers were, but we don't know who the people were. Now, if you know anything about collectibles, you know that dishes were very, very collectible for many, many years. And we have had, probably since the early 70s, a pretty neat collection of Waldoboro dishes. And they are in this cabinet over here. And they are all labeled. And it tells you that people started collecting Waldoboro dishes when they were made in 1890. And they go right away through to 1900, to 1910, to 1920, and to the last one's 1929. And they're beautiful. They're all pictures of Waldoboro that were taken and then sent to Germany or England. Most of them went to Germany. The dishes were created, sent back here, and as you look at them, you see how times changed and more color worked into the dishes. Now, one of the people that we love dearly in this museum was Richard Wallace, who passed away last year. And fortunately, we were given a portion of his Waldoboro dishes in his own collection. And because we wanted to show his collection off, a group of us who knew that some of his family-owned objects were going to go on auction, went to an auction, pooled our money, and bought this dish case that was in Richard's home, and we have all of his dishes in there. And we're very proud of them. Those are, on the top of it, are not banners, but pins from, this happens to be North Waldoboro's Maple Grange. Richard had collected those, and we were able to get those as well. We have things like spinning wheels. We have several of them in our collection. We can't bring them all down at once. This year, we did bring this one down, which was, it was first owned by Helen Heyer, then it went to Eldora Heyer, and then it went to Esther Gross. And so that is one of ours. We also have a beautiful clock that was found in the walls of a house in Waldoboro, salvaged, put together, and then given to the museum. We have a collection of pictures of the granite workers from the Filer Day Company here. We have some beautiful pictures of the Palmer fleet, the 6 ships that were essentially built here in Waldoboro and directed by George Welt. And they were 5-masted schooners for which we are famous. Now, as we go around here, we see more memorabilia. We have a beautiful old wedding gown that was worn by Cora Waltz, and her wedding photos, her shoes and her photos are in this case. We actually have, I get a charge out of this one. This is a single shot, 12 gauge full choke shotgun owned by our good buddy and friend Ashley Walter, who lived down on what we call today Wagner Bridge Road in one of the Welt homes, one of the Welt houses. We have sailors' valentines. We have a great exhibit on our governor, Governor Frederick G. Payne. And you see, we even have the Stetsons that were given to him when, as governor of the state of Maine, he visited Texas. And they gave him Stetsons. We have all kinds of things, invitations, so forth and so on. We actually have a set of the Dr. Stahl's books that were autographed for him. This is a wonderful exhibit. And here we have a 30-hour clock, we don't keep it running, with the original tablets and stenciling in the glass that was a gift of Sally Pennington, another wonderful lady of Waldoboro. We have examples of rocking chairs. We have ship models. We have a bowl that was used for chicken pies to feed the yard workers at the Kennedy Yard when that was one of the shipyards. You realize that there were 17 shipyards up and down the Waldoboro sides of the river, both sides of the river. We have paintings, wonderful, wonderful collections. We try to have as much as possible work that is done by Waldoboro artists in the museum. These are really interesting things. These are called coffin plates or casket markers, and they went on caskets. Now, how they came off the caskets, I'll never know, but we have them here. We have stereopticons with slides that people can look at. We have wonderful, wonderful collection of hair receivers. Most recently, our biggest collection came from Mrs. Ronald Dolliff. She and her husband collected them over the years, and when she was downsizing some, she gave a wonderful group of them to us. We have this chair was the original chair that the master of Monaga Grange sat in, and it was given by Martha Bogues, and we did have it recaned, but it's a wonderful chair, and I like to sit in it. It's not too high. My feet touch the ground, and that's good. This is the famous Governor Ames ship, and it was done by Albert Schumann, and we are happy to have that as a part of our collection. We have a whole collection of calendars. Now here's one from this is one from Benner's Tire Station, 1930. We have them from all different times. Gay's Nationwide Store, 1941. They're beautiful to look at. And our treasurer, Sue Betts, has put them in protective coverings so anybody can look at them and they're not damaged. Wonderful lamps given to us by Edwin Benner from the Kastner-Benner homestead. Wonderful little, sometimes they call them Betty lamps, little ones that would be put in a child's room perhaps. Curtain pulls. I remember curtain pulls when I was a girl. They're all hand crocheted. Cruets, beautiful cruets, a whole collection of those that came from Richard Wallace. Wonderful autograph books. Now, autograph books like the signature quilts came about in the 1800s, and almost everybody that went to school had an autograph book. And people wrote in it and wrote little lines of remembrance to the people. We have other collections in here. These down here, these are very, very heavy. I can't lift them. But they were saved when the old bridge was called the Groton Bridge Company made them. When the old bridge was taken down and the new bridge in Waldoboro was put up. And they were saved and given to the museum. And I think, I don't know whether it tells when they came, but yeah, the bridge over the Menominee River. And they were saved by Rule Hughley. He saw them taking the bridge down and said, "What are you going to do with those?" And they didn't know. They thought they'd probably just throw them away. And so he picked them up and brought them to the museum. And Rule was a wonderful, wonderful collector of historical items for the museum. And he gave us many, many things. Richard Wallace was very, very proud of this exhibit. It was an exhibit that he himself really put together, and it was in celebration of the Madomic Bank. And as you can see, the Madomic Bank was called the Madomic National Bank, Waldoboro's Madomic National Bank. and there are actual 1920 letter from the bank. There are samples of all of the paperwork that they use. There was a bond. There's a bond in there that was given to Richard. And I remember the day when the Depositors Trust went out of the building down there, and Richard knew that it was going to be sold. And that was the last home of the Madomic Bank. And so he said to me, "Will you go down with me? I would like to have a picture of that building to go in an exhibit that we'll have someday." And that was in 2010 when that building was sold. It is now very nicely taken care of, and that is for the artist Philippe, who is down there and has wonderful, wonderful, wonderful artwork on exhibit in that building, and they have taken very, very good care of it. The Madomic Bank was incorporated in 1836, and a lot of the directors that we know moved to the Fish Block in 1935, and later it became consolidated with Depositors Trust, and that was, of course, when Depositors Trust went out. That was when Richard wanted to have the picture of the bank. We have a collection here, in this case, of depression glass. That's another whole story as far as depression glass and how much of that is still around. Again, we have a bowl and pitcher, buffalo pottery that was given by Lillian Dolliff from the estate of Mildred Walter. And over here, there is a photo of the Gensner family, and all of Mr. Gensner's photos are a collection of the prints, not the prints, but the original film rests here in the museum. His daughter, Lisa, and her husband have given that material to us, and we have used it to create a couple of books showing Waldoboro over the years. Wonderful, wonderful work. We have another artist, photographer, Howard Marple, and we have a lot of his artwork in the way of photography. He was a retired gentleman who had roots here in Waldoboro and came here, and he took tremendous number of pictures. And when his last member of his family who lived in Waldoboro passed away, the descendants gave us all of his photos as well. So as you come along, seats from the Waldo Theater seats that were donated to us when the Masonic Lodge went out. This is a seat that goes with the Word of Life, that came from the Word of Life Church. This is a kind of interesting, it's a train case that was used to drop off at Waldoboro anything that needed to be sent as a dispatch to Waldoboro on the train. And that's here. And that was a gift of Bill Maxwell. Theater, oh my goodness. Waldoboro Theater posters. This old Star Theater that isn't in existence anymore. Maps. The original Masonic Temple stone. Other items in our collection, you'd have to stand here and go all the way through it to see the Boy Scouts, to see some of the memorabilia from Clark's Hall. You have also the kind of a pitcher and glasses that were used as a water pitcher and glass set many times in bedrooms. Old Evening in Paris, perfume and powder. Top hats, wonderful, wonderful items. And this is a recent gift. It's the dress, the hat, and even the gloves from Emma Bickmore Moody, Percy Moody's mother. And it was a gift of Debbie Bellows, that's the youngest daughter of Percy and his wife. And as I say, it'll take you forever, not really, but it takes a good time to go through and look at all the exhibits. And we are just so excited that we can make this video to let you know what you find when you come for free to the Waldoboro Historical Society.